The Russian casualty rate in Ukraine has reached an all-time high. But is it enough to stop the Russian onslaught, or is this all part of Putin's calculus? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. Okay, so this is absolutely pretty astounding. Russian forces reported losing a record 2,000 troops in a single day in Ukraine. This is, of course, from Kiev's figures, which skew a bit high, but honestly align pretty well with most Western estimates. Now, losses, as they point out, includes the dead, wounded, missing, and captured, but they do reflect, of course, the number of men, frankly, that Putin can't put into the fight, right, that have been taken out of the fight today. Some of this number likely includes lightly wounded who may be able to return to duty either eventually or shortly. But again, it also includes a fairly large number of dead, and sort of based on the Russian military, we're going to say time-honored tradition of not really caring too much about their wounded. It's likely about for every KIA, there's probably about 2 that are wounded beyond repair, so to speak, cannot be returned to duty. But the problem, of course, is not that Russia is incurring more losses. It's that Ukraine has also sustained significant losses of its own. In fact, The Economist, publishing numbers a few days ago, said that they think between 60,000 and 100,000 Ukrainian soldiers are KIA, with about 400,000 more too injured to continue to fight. That puts about 1 in 20 Ukrainian fighting-age men have been killed or injured in the war. And this is pretty troubling because the reality is that there's a different calculus between both sides right now. And on the Russian side, this is a war of choice, right? The Russians weren't forced into this conflict. I say the Russians, Putin, chose to embark on this war of conquest. As a result, he's recruited only volunteers and has tried diligently to avoid any kind of actual mobilization effort within the country. This is in contrast to Ukraine, who's fighting for its survival. So the fact is that Ukraine as a society is more willing to incur losses than the Russians. Think of the U.S. in Vietnam, where while the Vietnamese took significantly more casualties, they were fighting for their independence on their home territory, whereas the United States was fighting in a far-flung land where, frankly, its own people didn't really want it there. And when we look at the combat operations, though, we can see one of the biggest problems that Ukraine and Russia have, and that is that Russia's in the driver's seat, right? Russia is advancing, slowly in tiny places, but it's the one making the choice to do so. And so if Russia were to actually have substantial manpower problems, it would likely simply slow the rate of advances, slow the rate of attrition, build up its forces, and then push forward yet again. So again, this is pretty interesting. We're going to talk about exactly how, in kind of a tactical sense, yesterday was just so bad for Russian forces. But before we do, I did want to mention that if you feel like a Russian conscript, if you are a Russian conscript, dude, get out, dude. You're not, your lifespan is not that long. But if you feel like a Russian conscript, trying to get everything done over the holidays that you need to, you don't need to fuel yourself with gross, sugary energy drinks. You need to switch to Strike Gum. With 90 milligrams of caffeine, 0 sugar in every single piece, this little pack contains the equivalent of 5 Red Bulls worth of caffeine. So if you're looking for the more affordable, healthier energy drink alternative that you can just put in your pocket and go, you want to go to strikegum.com, right? And best of all, of course, it's Black Friday still. So through Monday, you can get 20% off every single thing site-wide. No promo codes, just pop in and do it. And thanks to thousands and thousands of people. In fact, we're close to fulfilling our 10,000th order, which is a sign that Strike Gum is blowing up, especially given the fact that we are in 0 retail locations. We're online only. Okay, let's talk about how exactly the Russians took so many casualties. And, now obviously the fighting taking place across the front line, but reportedly, a Russian assault near Chasiv Yar ended up turning into a massive Ukrainian ambush. After 3 months of persistent attacks, they report Russian forces secured a narrow bridgehead near Kalinivka, and then found themselves trapped in basement positions under constant Ukrainian drone surveillance. This is pretty classic here. Again, you can see they've got Russian forces conducting a bridging operation, trying to flank into this position here. The only problem is that, well, as the Russians found, when you cross these kind of bridgeheads, it's hard to cross them back. And once they crossed and deployed these troops, Russian troops ended up just sort of stuck in place, unable to retreat over the bridge, which was constantly monitored, and unable to leave their positions, which were constantly observed by drones. Russian troopers had to cross a 500-meter open field on foot, where Russian drones and artillery pieced them apart. These were highly attritional results, heavy casualties, often with 0 survivors. And again, this is what happens when Russia is forced to be canalized. And this is one of the reasons, in fact, that U.S. forces provided anti-personnel mines. It's because you can, with deployment of mines, you can actually create a lot of these narrow kill zones where there's only small canals or small channels in which infantry forces can safely pass. And once you have that, you have the ability to trick them to enter a region and then snip the lifeline using drone observation and well-placed artillery, and then you can simply attrit down those forces that remain. This is a pretty classic tactic. The only problem with it is, while it inflicts massive casualties on the Russian forces, it doesn't actually, there's no version of it that involves Ukrainian assaults, because Ukrainian assaults would, of course, incur comparable casualties, right? That's the problem with the whole thing. Anyway, guys, be sure to hit that subscribe button. That does make a difference. Thanks to Bill Collier, Robert Colburn, Guys, Martin, Gina Questa, Chris Courses, Francis Karis, L90, and Pecha Taru, as well as all of our Lieutenant tier members. I could not do this without you guys, and I appreciate you so much. See you in the next one. Cheers.